A few years ago, I went on a solo hiking trip to clear my head. I had just gone through a rough breakup, and I needed a weekend away from everything. I found a remote trail near Rainier National Park in Washington. Specifically, a lesser-known route off the Carbon River Trail that supposedly led to an abandoned fire lookout with amazing views. The trail itself wasn't well traveled, but that was fine by me. I packed light, just enough for an overnight stay, and started my hike early in the afternoon. The first few miles were peaceful. No other hikers, just the sound of the wind through the trees. But after about an hour, I started noticing something strange. There were old, wooden signs along the trail, but the writing on them was completely worn away. Some were barely standing, leaning at odd angles as if they hadn't been touched in decades. I assumed they had once marked different paths or campgrounds, maybe part of the Ipsute Creek cabin area, but without any text. They were just eerie reminders of how alone I was out there. As the sun started to dip below the tree line, I spotted something up ahead. At first, I thought it was the fire lookout, maybe part of the old Tolmy Peak lookout, but as I got closer, I realized it was a small wooden cabin. It looked old, really old. The wood was dark and weathered, the roof sagging slightly. There were no signs of life, no smoke from a chimney, no lights inside, just a single window, half covered by a torn curtain. I don't know why, but the sight of it made me uneasy. Something about the way it just appeared. Still, the sun was setting fast, and I didn't want to set up camp in the dark. I figured if it was abandoned, I could at least take shelter on the porch for the night. I stepped closer and called out, "Hello? Anyone in there?" No answer. I knocked on the door, and the sound echoed in a way that made it clear the place was empty. At least, that's what I thought. Then I heard a noise from inside. A slow, dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. I backed away immediately. My first thought was that an animal had gotten trapped in there, but something about the way the sound moved, deliberate, unhurried, made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be there. I turned around and decided to keep hiking. Sleeping in my tent suddenly seemed like a much better idea than staying anywhere near that place. I hiked for another 30 minutes before finally setting up camp in a clearing. The whole time, I felt watched. The trees were too quiet, the wind too still. But eventually, exhaustion took over, and I fell asleep. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night. At first, I didn't know why. The forest was silent. No wind, no rustling leaves, just nothing. Then I heard it. That same slow, dragging sound. But this time, it was coming from just outside my tent. I froze, barely breathing. The sound moved, circling my tent, pausing every few seconds like it was listening. I reached for my flashlight and, in one quick motion, unzipped the tent and shined the beam outside. Nothing. Just trees and darkness. No footprints, no broken branches. But when I turned my light toward the trail, my stomach dropped. The cabin was there. Not back where I had found it, but right at the edge of the clearing, barely 20 feet away. The door was open. I didn't pack up my tent. I didn't even put my boots on. I just grabbed my backpack and ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, lungs burning, heart hammering in my chest. The next day, I looked up the history of the area. I couldn't find any mention of an old cabin near the Carbon River Trail. In fact, I couldn't even find records of a cabin existing there at all. I don't know what I saw that night, but I know this, whatever it was, it followed me.